direct burial cables can indeed terminate inside a house, typically used with a weatherproof or waterproof junction box just inside the structure. Let's examine some cable types. Firstly, USB cable is rated for direct burial and can terminate in a panel inside the house using a waterproof junction box. However, it is not as flexible as US or SE cables. Secondly, US M-2 cable is generally rated for dry locations above ground, but it can be used for direct burial applications if coupled with a waterproof junction box at the point of termination inside the house. Thirdly, RN-F-90 cable is a feeder cable designed for direct burial and can be terminated in a panel inside the house using a weatherproof junction box. Now let's explore termination options in further detail. Weatherproof junction boxes feature waterproof gaskets and seals to prevent water from entering. These are used to connect the direct burial cable to the panel. Waterproof connectors exist that are specifically designed to terminate direct burial cables to panels or junction boxes. The advantages of using direct burial cable with indoor terminations include the elimination of the need for conduit and single conductors rated for wet locations, potentially reducing installation time and cost. It can also provide a more aesthetically pleasing and less intrusive installation compared to conduit. It is crucial to always consult with local electrical codes and obtain permits where necessary. The specific type of cable and installation method may vary depending on local regulations. For USB cable, it's important to verify the specific voltage and amperage requirements of the circuit it will serve. Common sizes include 14/2, 12/2, 10/2, and larger, with the first number indicating the wire gauge and the second indicating the number of conductors plus a ground. The ampacity of USB cable must comply with the National Electrical Code, Section 310.15, and any local amendments, ensuring it matches the overcurrent protection device. For example, 14-gauge copper wire is typically rated for 15 amps, 12-gauge for 20 amps, and 10-gauge for 30 amps. When using US M-2 cable, it's essential to ensure that the portion of the cable exposed to direct sunlight is sunlight resistant. US M-2 cable is often used for underground service entrance applications. Termination inside the house requires a suitable transition method to transition from the US M-2 cable to a wiring method approved for interior use, as specified by the National Electrical Code. This transition must be made within the waterproof junction box. Regarding RN-F-90 cable, this is often a larger gauge cable used for higher amperage feeders. It is crucial to select the correct size RN-F-90 cable based on the calculated load and voltage drop requirements. The National Electrical Code provides guidelines for calculating feeder sizes and voltage drop limitations. When terminating any of these cables into a panel, ensure that the panel is properly grounded and bonded according to NEC Article 250. The grounding and bonding system must be effectively connected to the earth to minimize the risk of electrical shock. Furthermore, use appropriate connectors listed for the specific type and size of cable being used. These connectors should provide a watertight seal to prevent moisture from entering the panel. The depth of burial for direct burial cables is another important consideration. The NEC specifies minimum burial depths based on the voltage of the circuit and the location of the cable. Typically, for residential applications, a minimum burial depth of 24 inches is required, but this can vary depending on local codes and conditions. Always verify the specific requirements with the local electrical inspector. When running direct burial cable, it's essential to avoid areas where the cable could be damaged by digging or other activities. Consider marking the location of the cable with warning tape or other means to prevent accidental damage. If the cable must cross under a driveway or other paved surface, it should be protected by conduit. The conduit should extend beyond the edge of the paved surface to prevent damage to the cable. When installing weatherproof junction boxes, ensure that they are mounted securely and that all openings are properly sealed. Use weatherproof sealant around the box to prevent water from entering. The junction box should be accessible for future maintenance and inspections. When using waterproof connectors, follow the manufacturer's instructions carefully to ensure a watertight seal. Over-tightening the connector can damage the cable or the connector itself, while under-tightening can result in a leak. Regularly inspect the direct burial cable and its terminations for any signs of damage or deterioration. This is especially important in areas with harsh weather conditions or where the cable is exposed to chemicals or other corrosive substances. If any damage is found, the cable should be repaired or replaced immediately. When working with electrical systems, always follow safe work practices. To energize the circuit before working on any electrical components, use appropriate personal protective equipment, such as gloves and eye protection. If you are not comfortable working with electrical systems, hire a qualified electrician to perform the work. Remember that electrical codes and regulations are constantly evolving. It's essential to stay up to date on the latest requirements to ensure that your electrical installations are safe and compliant. Consult with local electrical inspectors or qualified electricians to ensure that you are following the correct procedures. Direct burial cable installations can be a cost-effective and efficient way to provide power to outdoor structures or equipment. However, it's essential to follow all applicable codes and regulations and to use appropriate materials and techniques to ensure a safe and reliable installation. Remember, the specific type of cable appropriate for an installation will depend on the specific application and the local electrical codes. Always consult with a qualified electrician to determine the best cable for your needs. When pulling any cable through the ground, be mindful of rocks and other sharp objects that could damage the cable's insulation. Consider using a protective sleeve or conduit in areas where the cable is likely to be exposed to physical damage. If you are installing multiple direct burial cables in the same trench, maintain adequate spacing between the cables to prevent overheating. The NEC specifies minimum spacing requirements for direct burial cables. When terminating direct burial cables, be sure to use the correct type of termination lugs or connectors. These lugs or connectors should be listed for use with the specific type and size of cable being used. When torquing down the termination lugs or connectors, use a torque wrench to ensure that they are tightened to the manufacturer's specifications. Over-tightening or under-tightening the lugs or connectors can lead to loose connections or damaged equipment. When installing direct burial cable in cold climates, be aware that the ground can freeze and thaw, which can put stress on the cable. Consider using a cable that is specifically designed for cold weather applications. When backfilling the trench after installing the direct burial cable, use care to avoid damaging the cable. Use clean fill material that is free of rocks and other sharp objects. Compact the backfill material in layers to provide adequate support for the cable. When connecting direct burial cable to equipment, such as pumps or lighting fixtures, be sure to use weatherproof or waterproof enclosures. These enclosures will protect the equipment from the elements and prevent water from entering the electrical connections. When installing direct burial cable in areas where there is a high water table, consider using a cable that is specifically designed for wet locations. These cables are typically more resistant to moisture and corrosion. When working with direct burial cable, be aware of the potential for underground utilities. Before digging, always call 811 to have underground utilities located and marked. This will help prevent damage to the utilities and ensure your safety. Remember, electrical work can be dangerous. If you are not qualified to perform electrical work, hire a licensed electrician to do the job. In areas where the soil is particularly corrosive, consider using a direct burial cable that is specifically designed to resist corrosion. These cables typically have a thicker jacket or a special coating to protect the conductors from the corrosive elements in the soil. When running direct burial cable near trees, be aware of the potential for tree roots to damage the cable. Consider using a conduit or other protective barrier to prevent the roots from damaging the cable. When installing direct burial cable in areas where there is a risk of rodent damage, consider using a cable that is specifically designed to resist rodent damage. These cables typically have a tough outer jacket that is difficult for rodents to chew through. When terminating direct burial cable in a panel, be sure to properly label the circuit breaker or fuse that supplies power to the cable. This will help prevent confusion in the future and ensure that the correct circuit is de-energized when performing maintenance or repairs. When using direct burial cable to supply power to a detached garage or shed, be sure to install a grounding electrode system at the detached structure. This will help ensure that the electrical system at the detached structure is properly grounded and bonded. When installing direct burial cable, be sure to comply with all applicable codes and regulations. This includes the National Electrical Code, as well as any local codes or ordinances. When in doubt, consult with a qualified electrician or electrical inspector to ensure that your installation is safe and compliant. Always remember to prioritize safety when working with electricity. Take the time to understand the risks involved and to follow safe work practices. If you are not comfortable performing electrical work, hire a qualified electrician to do the job. Before beginning any electrical work, always disconnect the power to the circuit at the main panel. Use a voltage tester to verify that the circuit is de-energized before touching any wires or components. When working with electrical wires, always use insulated tools. This will help protect you from electric shock. Wear appropriate personal protective equipment, such as gloves and eye protection, when working with electrical systems. Be aware of your surroundings and avoid working in wet or damp conditions. If you are working on a ladder, be sure to use a ladder that is in good condition and that is properly secured. Never work alone when performing electrical work. Have someone nearby who can assist you in case of an emergency. If you are not sure how to perform a particular electrical task, consult with a qualified electrician. Never guess or take shortcuts when working with electricity. Always follow the manufacturer's instructions when installing electrical components. If you encounter any problems or difficulties during an electrical installation, stop work and consult with a qualified electrician. When completing an electrical installation, be sure to test the system to ensure that it is working properly. Use a voltage tester to verify that the voltage is correct and that there are no shorts or ground faults. When finished with an electrical project, clean up your work area and dispose of any waste materials properly. Remember that electrical work can be dangerous if it is not performed correctly. Take the time to learn about electrical safety and to follow safe work practices. If you are not comfortable performing electrical work, hire a qualified electrician to do the job. In Maine, specific codes and regulations may apply to direct burial cable installations. Check with local authorities to ensure compliance. Consider the potential for ice and snow accumulation when determining the burial depth and location of the cable. Protect the cable from physical damage caused by snow removal equipment or other activities. Ensure that the cable is properly supported and protected where it enters or exits the ground. Use appropriate fittings and connectors to prevent moisture from entering the cable or the electrical panel. Properly seal any penetrations through walls or foundations to prevent water damage. Regularly inspect the cable and its terminations for any signs of wear or damage, especially after severe weather events. Take extra precautions when working near underground utilities, such as gas lines or water pipes. Contact the appropriate authorities to locate and mark these utilities before digging. Be aware of the potential for wildlife to damage the cable. Use rodent-resistant cable or other protective measures to prevent damage from animals. Consider the aesthetic impact of the cable installation and take steps to minimize its visibility. Use landscaping or other techniques to conceal the cable where possible. Properly label all electrical panels and circuits to ensure that they are easy to identify. This will help prevent confusion and ensure that the correct circuits are de-energized during maintenance or repairs. Keep a record of all electrical work performed, including the location of the cable, the type of cable used, and the date of installation. This information will be helpful for future maintenance and repairs. Remember that electrical codes and regulations are subject to change. Stay up to date on the latest requirements to ensure that your electrical installations are safe and compliant. Consult with local electrical inspectors or qualified electricians to ensure that you are following the correct procedures. Prioritize safety at all times when working with electricity. Take the time to understand the risks involved and to follow safe work practices. If you are not comfortable performing electrical work, hire a qualified electrician to do the job. This information is for general guidance only and should not be considered a substitute for professional advice. Always consult with a qualified electrician or electrical inspector to ensure that your electrical installations are safe and compliant.